Hi, my name's Tom Newton. I'm one of the VPs for product here at Smoothwall, and welcome to a new series called Tom Talks Tech, in which I use my 20 years of experience in the student safety business to try and disentangle some of the thorny technical problems you might encounter while trying to keep students safe online. In this edition, we're going to be busting some of the myths around real-time content filtering. Many vendors will tell you that their web filter does content filtering. Unfortunately, this word has been rather overused in the past, and it really doesn't mean anything anymore. So we're going to look at what real-time content filtering actually means for your web filter and your safeguarding practice. So let's get into some of the details. Most filter vendors will brand their offering as a content filter. Content filtering is really a slightly meaningless term in the modern world as everybody uses it. What does it really mean to be a content filter? Well, content filtering talks about how we assess a site for its suitability to be presented to a student. Some filters will use lists of DNS names, host names, and URLs in order to decide whether a site is good or bad or acceptable or unacceptable.
Yeah.
However, in the modern world, we want to look a little deeper than that, and as such, we look at the content of the site. Where does real-time come into it, though? And what difference does that make? Real-time content filtering means that actually, as the student pulls down that piece of content from the web, that our filter is examining it there and then as the transaction takes place. With Smoothwall, when we say real-time content filtering, we mean it. We mean when a piece of internet content comes onto your network or onto a student's device, that content will be analysed in real time there. Not the URL, not just the domain, not just the search terms, but the content that is being viewed will be analysed in real time, either on the device or on the network filter as appropriate. With students trying to evade web filters using things like proxy anonymizers, which are specifically designed to appear on different domains really quickly and change where they are to avoid list-based filtering, traditional domain and URL filters simply aren't good enough. Add to this the threat of artificial intelligence generated content, and we're really in a new world where domain filtering isn't going to get you where you need to be. You're going to be blocking too much of the internet if you're trying to filter based on domain. You're going to say, well, this site could contain something bad, therefore I'm going to have to block it. I can't be discriminate enough in my blocking to allow the internet. And what we want to do is we want to allow students to have as much free rein in their browsing as possible so we can maximize their educational potential without over blocking. That's why true real-time content filtering is important. So when I'm talking about real-time content filtering, people assume that the main problem is that when an unknown site is encountered, the filter has to send that site back to the filter vendor's back office systems for classification. And of course, there's a delay involved in that. The delay might be relatively short. It might be a couple of hours, might be a couple of days. In that time, of course, the site is likely to be allowed. And if the site's inappropriate, that's a problem. But it isn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the fact that it's the back office filter vendor that's visiting that site. Let's take, for example, my Blue Sky account. When I log into my Blue Sky account, I'm going to see a lot of boring technical guff because, frankly, that's what I enjoy. I'm also going to see a bunch of Leeds United content. Well, I'm not going to say I enjoy that, but anyway, I consume it. Hard luck me. When you log into your social media accounts, you're going to see something different to mine, I hope. In the same way, when a web filter vendor accesses the site that the student has been accessing, they're not necessarily going to see the same thing. In the example of a social network like Blue Sky or Facebook, they'll probably just see the login page. They won't see any content at all. They're not then able to assess that content realistically. Similarly, if I've visited a page that's generated by AI, it's likely that that generation has taken into account my personal preferences, the things I've searched for, how I've arrived at that site. When I send that URL to a filter vendor's back office to be analysed, it won't be the same. Or if that URL is completely personalised, that URL may not exist after some time. They may visit the site and find they just get a 404 because the content that was generated specifically for me has only been there ephemerally. It's not been there for a long time and is now gone. So we can't assess that site. So that is actually the main problem. We're not assessing it on the true content. We're not looking at what the students really asked for. We're not looking at the students really seen. And we're making a bit of a guess about what that site's about. We're having to make a generalisation. That generalisation has to go back into their filter lists and remain there, sometimes for 6 months to a year. And so we've taken that poor information, we've generalised about it, and then we've baked that generalisation into our categorisation rules, and that's going to harm safety. When I talk about real-time content filtering, people always say to me, I think my web filter's working all right, I've got no evidence to the contrary, and Tom, there's no regulatory requirement for me to use a real-time content filter. And yeah, that has been the case up until now, but that's changing. In October 24, the DfE released some guidance that advised IT professionals to look at the technical limitations of their content filter, and specifically those technical limitations as it pertains to the real-time filtering of content. The UK Safer Internet Centre take this one step further. They explain why we should be looking at real-time content filtering, and they point out the rise in AI-generated content is a key driver for this. It's great to see the government and the UK Safer Internet Centre ahead of the curve, keeping up with the latest technologies in the same way our schools and colleges should be. Well, that wraps up the first episode of Tom Talks Tech. Wasn't our first choice of name, but we really liked the alliteration. I hope you enjoyed what we talked about. If you've got any comments or you'd like us to cover a particular subject, please get in touch at inquiries@smoothwall.com, or if you're watching on the socials, drop us a comment. Otherwise, you can find me on my usual hangouts on EduGeek, places like that. Get in touch. Love to know what you think about the series. Love to know any improvements you think we could make. And yeah, thanks for watching and see you next time.